Go ahead.
I'll be honest. I played at very high standard. Young superstar. Give some lessons. Determination. When you say best, that's hard to define. Competition was extremely...
Welcome to the Chess Underground. Eccentricities, peculiarities, and theoretical novelties.
Here. And I felt be down in flames, not like bombs. My style. I sense my style and skills.
I only think so.
From a distance. That's a secret. 0 day. Oh, nice. Generating a virtual mating attack. The reflections. Impact. My skills never been in question. Style of tall. Style of tall.
Okay, welcome back to the Chess Underground. I am here with International Master Kassa Korley. Kassa, how's it going?
I'm good, Pete. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for joining me and for sitting down to talk to me. Kassa, you have like a really interesting chess story. Let's start sort of at the beginning. How did you get into it? What drew you to the game? And what brought you into the world of chess?
Yeah, wow, that really takes me back quite a bit. But I guess the brief synopsis would be that I started playing, or I knew how to play chess when I was 5. I don't actually know how I learned, but I knew how to move the pieces and play and so on. And some of my earliest chess memories are connected to the neighborhood I grew up in. I grew up in Harlem, in the heart of New York City. And I was in public school at the time, and you take the yellow school bus to school. Is it yellow everywhere? I assume so, but I'm not sure.
I always picture it must be, right?
Okay. So like, I was wondering if even like in other countries, it's like they have yellow school bus. I don't know. But anyway, I took the yellow school bus to school and to and from school. And where I was actually picked up and dropped off, a block away across the street, basically, was a guy named Sonny Gibbs, who sold flowers on the corner and also happened to have a bunch of chess sets out. And so I would get off that school bus and actually play chess with him in between his sales.
Wow.
And
okay.
he would talk a lot of smack while, he was giving me the business. And essentially, I would go pretty much almost every day from school and just get some games, sometimes almost until right before nighttime. And my mom had this rule, like, don't be home when it's dark or I'll be in trouble or grounded or whatnot. But basically, that kind of really was one of the initial kind of touch points. And by the time I was 7 or 8, I was winning the majority of the games. And so it was like, okay, I've kind of made it here. Let's try and get some make it other places too.
You've reached the milestone of defeating Sonny, so now we can move on, next level up almost. Yeah,
and honestly, like he was probably, I mean, I can't say for sure, but he probably was maybe like somewhere in like the 12 to 1200 range, I would say. But it was just awesome that what he did for many kids in the community, like myself, he gave people to kind of like he gave people a place where they could, kind of just connect with others, and it was just a good thing to do for kids in the community. And actually, when I was in college, which was in 2014 or 2013, actually, he was actually being threatened to move off the block because he didn't have a permit at that particular time, and my mom was so incensed with the prospect of this guy that's done so much for the community getting the boot like that she rallied a bunch of signatures and so on. And there was an article in the New York Times about him, and he managed to stay.
Wow.
So yeah, he was really kind of like a pillar. And I actually moved a little bit further, like about a mile south from where Sonny was and where I originally grew up playing against him when I was in like middle school. but I would still come back, every now and then, just kind of pay my respects, you could say, show, just pay it back in any way I could.
Right. Pay it forward. That's awesome. So you are completely self-taught. I know a lot of people out there are trying to, learn chess on their own and kind of do a similar thing. What are the secrets? How, I guess let's start right there. How did you get to a point where you went from, hey, what is this game that this dude over here is playing, to I can beat Sonny now?
Yeah, so some of those secrets, frankly, I still keep to myself because I'm an active player. So
right. Yes.
There at some point down the road, I will hopefully write a book or tell my story a bit more, to tell that part of the story. But I think initially what I'm doing now, basically, to improve and get better is definitely a little bit different than I did when I started. Okay. I think when I started, it was really like a dogged determination. And I think you find this with people that get into chess and all of a sudden become interested, is they play it enough where it's difficult to ignore. And so for me, I really enjoyed the throes of competition, and chess and basketball were the avenues through which I could do that. In fact, until I was maybe like 20 or 21, or maybe 22, chess and basketball were pretty much, I was the same level in both, I would say. It was not far off. And so I always used, chess and basketball were the vehicles through which I could compete. And I enjoyed winning. I enjoyed the process that got you to the point of winning. And so when you lose, and I was frankly getting it handed to me by Sonny initially, I kept coming back to the table. And so I think a lot of that determination is kind of the initial thing. And I'm someone, when I lost, it was constantly trying to understand why that was the case. And so I'm the type of person that will constantly be reevaluating my decision making, because I think what happens when you lose, right, is there's almost like a questioning of what I did wrong, what went wrong here, what with my decision making I didn't understand. And I was someone that kind of really was vigilant about trying to not make the same mistake again, right, or just trying to improve and tinker with whatever I initially did. And that'll go a long way, actually. Most people play without having that reflection. And I think especially if you're playing, Blitz, or some people enjoy Bullet and all these things online, you play so much without any reflection on the games. And so you have to kind of find that balance.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's easy to just get into a 3-hour Blitz session, and the next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Without any reflection at all.
Right.
It's interesting you use the exact terms dogged determination. Are you familiar with Dvoretsky's Training for the Tournament Player?
I am not. Actually, that's... of course, I'm aware of Dvoretsky, but I'm actually someone that did not grow up on a ton of chess books either. So a lot of my teaching was explicitly through playing and revising, and just
almost like editing a draft or a manuscript.
Yeah, in a way. Except it's weird because I always was frustrated in academia when people said my writing wasn't great the first time. So,
right. What are you talking about? This is a work of genius.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was someone that actually, when I was writing, I always was very conscious to play it over my head many, many, many times before I actually put it down on the screen. I want to say on paper, but really on the screen. That's where it was the primary mode of writing for my generation. So, but yeah, that's actually kind of funny that you mentioned that, because I didn't really consider chess to be that way, but it partially is. I consider chess to be part art, part sport, part science, and frankly, I enjoy the art and the sporting elements of it. I don't particularly enjoy the scientific aspect, so it's funny that it's just funny you mentioned that.
I'm laughing because I feel the exact same way. I'm all about the art and I'm all about the sport, and the science. Okay, it exists. And we'll leave it at that.
Right.
So let's talk hoops. You're a big basketball player. It's funny because I would actually say for a long time my basketball skill also mirrored my chess skill, although that has dropped off significantly. Are you a Knicks fan? Being from New York?
I mean, technically I am, but frankly, I every year I pick maybe like 7 or 8 teams that I find like championship that may have championship aspirations or that I find are really play well, and I watch those. And the Knicks haven't been that way in like 10 years. So
yeah, that's
so
true.
I don't watch bad basketball. It's like it really pains me to do that. So, but yeah, basketball's always been a very significant part of my life. I played at every level until college. I didn't play in college, but I wound up going to Duke University, and part of the impetus for going there was to be around a basketball culture. So, so when I visited, I got to scrimmage with Kyrie Irving and the Duke team that had just lost to Arizona at the time in the tournament. Derek Williams, who actually wound up being in New York at some point, like had an amazing first half, and they lost basically early. And it was awesome. Like, Kyrie was I couldn't really guard him very well, but
not many people can.
But he couldn't guard me well either. So we went back and forth, and it was a lot of fun. And then they put me in the basketball dorm at the time at the basketball dormitory in my freshman year, and so my year was Quinn Cook and Michael Benajay, who eventually transferred to Syracuse, and Marshall Plumlee, and just the opportunity to play ball, and their off season to play with them was kind of cool. And also, I played most days when I was in college, just in the gyms and so on. That was important to me to be around like a basketball culture.
Yeah, do you see as somebody who plays both, very, very well and very extensively, like, do you see any parallels between basketball and chess?
I think sometimes the parallels are a little bit overblown, in part because people so desperately want to make chess a sport. And I actually don't see it that way. I see chess as a game with sporting qualities. But that being said, I do think there are parallels with respect to anticipation. Like,
Interesting.
I was always a point
psychological
guard. Well, no, I was always a point guard and just kind of seeing things before they develop, or like kind of, when you're making reads, in real time, like at least as a point guard, running fast breaks, running pick and rolls, you're reading a lot of different coverages. And so it's the same, it's similar in chess. Even if you don't know the particular opening line or something that you're playing, you have a bunch of pictures that are a product of the games and of you've seen before. And you're basically trying to play into pictures that you think you've seen that are, that are good without even necessarily realizing it. You're pulling on information that you've had before and trying to assess those things. And so in some ways there's that parallel. And of course, I think the other thing is there's, winners and losers, which I mean is kind of, one of the really awesome parallels about chess and, basketball and other sport is you get a payoff upon completion of what you're doing, which is just so rare in frankly most workplace environments, right? Like you don't know, you might have done something decent, but you might not know for years whether what you did had a real tangible impact on your company or so on.
Right. It's interesting. You mentioned you don't consider chess a sport, and I want to ask you about that because as an athlete, as a basketball player yourself, and as a person who has played in very serious chess tournaments, which do you find more exhausting? 3 hours at the rec, playing some pickup games, or like one tournament game?
Wow, and that's really tough to say. I think for both of those, I kind of would still be wanting more when it's over if it's only 3 hours. But maybe if you up the hours a little bit more, I think I'd say basketball would be. I
was trying to compare it to the length of a tournament game. Get in the ballpark.
Sure. I don't know. My games are rarely 3 hours. They're almost always longer than that. So,
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think part of the reason for me is there have been too many chess players that have been effective enough or significantly effective without having the kind of athletic prerequisite that,
Yes,
we tend
that's
to
fair.
assign to, a Magnus type,
Yeah.
and frankly, there are just too many individuals that are too successful at the game not having that. So, Magnus is someone to be lauded for, his athleticism. I think sometimes it's a bit overblown how athletic and talented in that department he is. I think it's just when you grade on a curve compared to the other chess players out there, you can see, okay, wow, this guy's like a superstar in every way. So, but that's the primary issue. And I think if you talk about modern chess today, this is why I tell a lot of people that aren't very familiar with chess but understand some sport, is when you play basketball or football or soccer or something, right? You might watch a game film, and the game film will at best constitute maybe 15-20% of what actually happens in the game. Like,
Right.
it doesn't.
It'll help, but it's not a predominant factor.
Correct. Whereas in chess, if the opening aspect of the game, particularly at the higher levels, I would say is 60 to 70% deterministic of the actual outcome, the result of the game. And so, in that sense, the preparation aspect is so much more skewed that it's. I think that's another place where you have to kind of see some of the parallels.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Just the extraordinary emphasis that is placed on preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
I'm curious, you mentioned at the higher levels, and I know you're currently actively going for your GM norm. I don't want you to divulge any secrets, of course, but how's that going? And what are some things you're doing to sort of pursue that in terms of selecting tournaments and in terms of just general approach?
Yeah. So I left my sort of corporate America job, you could say, in January 2019. I was working at Codecademy, a tech startup that teaches people how to program. And I felt that, in 2018, I got my first GM norm and I had made some real progress. And I thought, what I realized is every tournament, we had unlimited PTO at Codecademy, and every unlimited paid time off, that's a PTO. And that's rare, but
that's a pretty nice gig.
I feel like a lot of these tech companies are hip to that. But basically, what I realized is every vacation I took was to play a tournament. And then at some point it was like, why am I not doing this full time? Like, if this is what I'm actually, if this is my aim, why am I working in a job that's still, giving me that opportunity to do this, but I could do it more. And so I just made the decision to kind of go for it. And I decided that, like, my 20s would essentially be about dream chasing, and maybe my 30s would be more about the financial foundation that one would presumably want to build if they want to start a family and so on. So I made that decision in 2019, and I left, and I basically played more games than any chess player in North America. It was almost 280 games. It was unbelievable. And
we're talking FIDE rated classical games.
Correct. Okay. I think I landed maybe like 170 or 165, but it was a remarkable amount. I was playing 2 to 3 tournaments a month, every month, and traveling like crazy. I made some progress there. I got my second GM norm in 2019. I had some health related issues that really made the journey a lot more challenging. And basically, it didn't happen for me in 2019 the way I wanted to, but it made progress. And I think probably the best highlight of 2019 was a game that most people know me for now, which is a game I played against Moisenko at the ExtraCon Open, which was, if anyone hasn't seen it, if you see it, you will understand it'll be one of the greatest games you've ever seen.
Nice.
It was voted by some people at chess.com as like the 4th or 5th best game of the year. I think it should have been 1. But I will never play a better game in my life. It was a perfect game, essentially. Anyways, then coronavirus happened. Then COVID happened.
Right.
So,
and OTB just like died basically. Yeah.
Right. And then I came back to chess, tournament playing in the middle of basically the late summer 2021. I was a lot more conservative through COVID than most people. I recognize that. I have family in New York City. I didn't want to compromise anyone. And I'm also generally just a little bit, safer about how I move, I would say. So, but upon my return, I was not the same player I was when I left. And so, and I think I think I knew more about chess than I ever have, but at the same time, I think that there was a major market correction that happened, where there's a host of juniors that hadn't essentially played chess in 2 to 3 years and were hundreds of points stronger than they actually are. And I had a slew of tournaments in the US where I played. I had these types of games where I conceded draws that, which are basically like -4, -5 every time. And so basically the rating took kind of a serious dip actually in 2021, and now we're in 2020, and the tournaments were also quite infrequent still. Just being in this COVID environment, there have been tournaments that are canceled. You don't know, especially in Europe, the past when Omicron wave happened in late 2021, and things were being shut down, countries were back on lockdown. So the reason I played so many chess games in 2019 was I was kind of a momentum guy. I thought if I got enough shot attempts up, there's going to be some good results.
Catch fire, get on a hot streak. Yeah,
that's right. And it's just been tough to conjure that. So now we're in 2022, amazingly, and I'm getting back on the horse again and trying to build that momentum and put it all together. And you mentioned the norm. I do need one more norm. But for me, I really don't think about that much. I think the rating is the harder aspect of the requirement, because I liken the GM norm to like a 2 or 3 home run game, and I liken the rating to batting 300 over the course of a season. Consistency, and I think consistency over time is much harder than the isolated brilliance. Playing great for a week, So that's where my focus lies. I've always had as a chess player, I've had a very high ceiling. I've had a too low a floor at times, and so that's where I need to work now.
Elevating the floor.
Correct.
Yeah. Are you playing primarily in the United States or Europe when you're aiming for these norm events, or somewhere else?
Well, it kind of depends on what is financially feasible in part. Not only have I've never had a coach, but I also haven't had any sponsors, so I have to really be wise about, where I pick and choose, and people that, play chess, and play tournaments ultimately understand that, it's not cheap to go, go somewhere for like a week, food, hotel, travel, and so on. So I try to just kind of ensure that, if I am making these trips, that they kind of make sense. So to answer your question specifically, Charlotte has had a bunch of norm events. The Charlotte Chess Center has done a great job with norm events. So I've been playing those a lot. Once in a while, I'll play a continental chess event, although I'm not in love with those. And then I'll also, play European events as well. So I'm just right now, I'm trying to get back to the 2019 flow, I'll say, of tournament schedule. So, I have a Google spreadsheet where I have events, and then I check the what I think would be the price of the travel, and try to allocate a budget and so on, and then try to make it happen. And so that really for me, I feel like the 2 to 3 tournaments a month. 3 is like at best, but really 2 tournaments a month is what I want. And I'm getting that in April for the first time in a long time. So I'm going to Reykjavik from the 5th to the 13th to play the Reykjavik Open. I get back on the 13th, and then the 14th is Ostrovsky and his team that have recently mirrored the Charlotte norm model are having an event from the 14th to the 18th of April in New York City. So I'm basically playing back-to-back events, and that was the way it was before. So I'm looking forward to putting my best foot forward in that direction.
That's great. Have you played Reykjavik before? That's one that's actually on my bucket list. I would love to play there. Yeah,
actually, excuse me. I have to give me 1 second. Sorry, I hope you edit that. I just
no, we're definitely keeping that in.
All right. Yeah, I've actually been to Reykjavik 3 or 4 times, maybe 3 times, because I had a date. I play for the. How should I put this? All right, let me start that over. So basically, I played in Reykjavik 3 times.
Okay.
Basically, because when I switched federations, I switched to the Danish federation in college, actually, so that I was eligible to play for the Danish championship. And to do that, I had to switch. I have a lot of Danish chess people that I have good relationships with, and I'm still a member of a Danish club. And so one of my Danish club mates was someone that played in the Icelandic leagues, and team chess. And in the Icelandic league, they offered me a spot to play for the team.
Nice.
And basically, this first happened several years ago. I want to say it was like 17 or 18, but I can't be certain right now. And the leagues actually happened to be like a week or so before the Reykjavik Open. So it was just natural to just play it up right after. And so, and then I enjoyed the Reykjavik Open so much that I wound up coming back on my own, even without playing for the league, because frankly, as a chess player, it's one of the best chess environments you can have. It's one of the best ones out there, basically, as far as tournaments are concerned. It's really the Harpa Concert Hall is worth a Google. In fact, when I say I've been to Reykjavik or tell people about it, I just say Google the Harpa Concert Hall, and you'll understand why it's such a beautiful place to play. It just looks really great. And then of course, then Iceland is also a country that has its wonders that people also enjoy. So highly recommend it, honestly.
That's awesome. It's, as I mentioned, it's on my bucket list, and it's one that I really, really want to go to for a variety of reasons. So I'm thrilled to hear you're going this year, and hopefully can hit a norm there or gain some rating.
Yeah. The one thing about it, though, I will say is Reykjavik is, they have a massive tourist economy, and it is expensive. So you have to definitely be comfortable with that reality. But it's a beautiful place.
Nice. Kassa, shifting gears a bit, you during the pandemic years, you were streaming. And one of the reasons that I brought you on is I really wanted to talk about your work there and what you do there. Help our listeners out who haven't watched your stream like I have. What is Chess Radio?
Sure. So Chess Radio is a Twitch stream where I basically play chess and talk about what I'm doing, all the decisions I'm making while I'm playing, while in the background you have hip hop or house music, primarily hip hop, but hip hop, house, and some other genres of music playing in the background. And, all of a sudden in, April, March 2020, we had a lot more idle time than we had previously. And for me, it was a really good outlet to just kind of be productive. Excuse me. But it was just a really awesome way to be involved in the chess community while you're kind of idle. And for me, it also was an interesting way to connect with people that hadn't had the type of exposure to chess that I'd had before through my life. So it was awesome to interact with people from, frankly, all over the world. I would do something during the streams at times where I'd be like, hey, where's everyone tuning in from tonight? Usually I would stream in the evening. And I was just flabbergasted at all the countries that people would, and cities that people would say in the chat, whether it's like Japan, South Africa, Norway, Texas, Wyoming. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And that was pretty awesome. I think one of the things that made my stream unique, even through the Twitch boom, which chess really took off with people indoors and with Queen's Gambit and so on, was that it is very rare to find someone explain chess well. And there are really popular chess, chess content creators now. It goes without saying. But even so, I'm pretty confident that I'm the best chess explainer out there. And I think part of the reason is because I never had a coach. And so being able to crystallize difficult decisions in kind of simpler language, I think is something that was a strength of mine. And then also most people didn't really play music like that because of the copyright concern. And so people are always asking me, hey, why don't you save your streams? Can you save your streams? And one of the things with Chess Radio was that the streams weren't saved because then I could bump whatever music I wanted. And then it also created an urgency around you having to be there for the stream. And so I thought that combination kind of made me a little bit different than the existing market.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that. Do you feel that being self-taught really gave you, a unique perspective on almost like, when I talk to students, sometimes I call it talking to yourself. One of my favorite chess quotes is that you should be able to explain any chess position to yourself in plain English, which I believe is a quote from a Yugoslavian Grandmaster. But yeah, do you think that had an impact in terms of, how you're able to connect with that audience?
Yeah, for sure. And just explicitly what I did as a teenager, like really like 13, 14, 15, was I went to chessgames.com every day. I didn't have ChessBase or database or anything. I went to chessgames.com, which is a free website for the most part. And I went into, on the left-hand side of the window and on the website of the page, you have a list of current tournaments going on. And I would click on the tournament that was going on and essentially pick, go through all the games that were there and then kind of try to figure out what was going on. And so I would play through all the games that were in the top tournaments in the world, try to flip through, basically just hit the arrow key from beginning to end. It would be like a 2-3 minute process, and then try to rationalize why decisions were being made. And a lot of times I didn't really know. But then when I saw the same kind of movements happen again and again, it's like, oh, this must be how white gets to this particular aim. Or, black is playing G6 here as prophylaxis against this move. And so by seeing something enough times, I was able to kind of piece it together and explain it to myself.
Interesting. Almost, I mean, in a way, kind of like a crowdsourcing of chess ideas.
Yeah. And then they also had this opening explorer on the right-hand side. If you scroll down on the right-hand side of the page, and I would basically I'd get to play like 6 or 7 moves in the opening, maybe a little more, maybe closer to 10. And then I could look at all the games from that position that they had in the chess games database. And, in fact, there was a little, they would lock you out, actually. They would lock you out of the page if you kept clicking to try and get deeper and deeper into an opening line, but you weren't a member. I found like a hack around that actually.
I wish I would have interviewed you 10 years ago, because as you're describing this, I'm thinking, yup, I remember that. I used to use chess games too, and I would always get frustrated when it would say, "We're sorry, you can't go any further," or whatever.
Yeah, here's the hack. So I don't even like. Basically,
okay, chessgames.com. If you're listening, this doesn't exist. Just press pause and end the podcast now. Go ahead.
Right. So basically, right before they lock you out, you could click on a game that's there in the line you care about. And then on the page where the game is, there's the option, I think towards the bottom right-hand side of the page, it says find similar games. And then when you click find similar games, you're back in a page with the database of games they're trying to lock you out of. So, yeah. And in fact, chessgames.com is still quite useful, just because its functionality with Lichess is really great. So, you can basically copy paste any chessgames.com URL into a Lichess study, and it imports the games seamlessly. So it's still a really awesome tool, actually, if you do any teaching.
I feel really dumb now because I've been using the old school method. In chessgames.com at the bottom, you can click the view for the PGN, and then you can just copy paste the moves.
Oh man, that's like 3 or 4. It really is seamless. You could take just a URL link and put it. It's really beautiful.
Oh man, well that's going to save me a lot of time, because I use Lichess a ton. I'm a big fan, and I always open the study and then I do PGN, and then I go and copy the PGN from Chess Games and put it in the Lichess study. So you have just saved me an inordinate amount of time, and I appreciate that. So do you still do some teaching yourself and coaching, or are you almost like 100% on playing and training these days?
I do teach privately. I mean, playing chess, unless you're, I would say unless you're like top 20, top 50 in the world, really like top 20 or 30, it's difficult to sustain yourself through chess tournaments. Yeah. So for me, especially with, what I'm trying to do and the travel required to become a Grandmaster, I have to support myself. And so teaching has been a great vehicle to do that. Now, that being said, I'm not maybe taking on, as significant a load as I could, because I do believe that it's difficult to teach a great amount and also still have the same personal ambitions that I have. And so, you have to kind of compartmentalize each experience, because the private teaching, most of the time you're working with people that, are in a different place with their chess development. So,
right.
So in that sense, I do enough to support, my expenses and so on, but not too much more than that, because, chess teaching, as lucrative as it is, particularly in some urban environments in cities like New York, I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it to in pursuit of a dream, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you do primarily individual or schools or both, or?
It's all individual.
Okay.
So, and it's basically all Zoom. So I'm usually on Zoom several hours a day, just with like 1 hour sessions with people. And that was another thing that was really great about Twitch is, people learn about you, hear about you that, never knew about you. And you get opportunities to essentially, you get more business. People, come around and are like, hey, I saw your stream. I really like the way you explain this. Do you teach? Do you give lessons? And
right.
And then so that was actually a really particularly in the pandemic, it was just a really awesome, way to get new business and expand your economy.
Yeah, it's it's nice in a way. It's weird because this new reality we're living in with COVID, right? Everything has changed. There's no way around that. But in a way, it's actually made certain aspects of chess in particular, chess is a game that really can adapt to an online setting. You know, you can play it online, you can teach it online, you can study it online, you can connect online through Twitch and through the Twitch chat and through, you know, streaming. So I think we really benefited in a way from that symbiosis between chess and its natural connection to natural transition to an online sport, if you will, an esport.
Right. And I think, you know, many jobs, right, obviously change the way they do business in some way forever, whether understanding that like having, you know, all this brick and mortar is not so critical, or understanding that, you know, there can be flex schedules or remote work. And I do think the way that, you know, at least personally, but I wouldn't, probably not the only one, the way even, you know, teaching chess, the way you taught chess is just different, because previously the paradigm, at least in New York City, if you had students, was to go to them to teach. And now that seems insane to me. So
yeah, right. Trying to travel around. Exactly.
Yeah. You're losing time traveling, and you know, that, I mean, that's lost compensation. And so, you know, it's important that, you know, when if you're working with kids, that they do have some in-person element. Like, I'm not someone that's going to be an advocate of you know, virtual school or anything like that indefinitely. But at the same time, I now have had to tell, you know, parents that like, hey, like the game done changed. Like I'm never going back to weekly in person. Like, and so I've, you know, even personally had to work things out where like I'll come maybe once every month or two or something along those lines, because it doesn't make sense. Right. And unless I'm being compensated for that type of travel, you're just losing so much time on, you know, the train or biking or however you get to and fro places. So, yeah,
no, I completely agree. When I was a full-time coach, I had the same issue, and I live in a small town, you know. But if you're taking, you know, 15 minutes in between each meeting, you know, by the time you get to the fourth meeting, that's an entire other lesson you could have done.
Yeah.
And I would imagine in New York it's significantly longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not driving anywhere. Let me put it like that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's. I would say, I mean, I'm not working exclusively with kids or anything, but you know, it's something. It's a discussion I've had to have. So.
Do you find that teaching and coaching helps your playing career, or maybe no impact, or is it harming it? How do you feel about that? Is it enhancing your skills? Are you learning more as you do it?
I mean, you know, the old, you know, saying or adage is when you teach someone else, you reinforce your own understanding, and I don't think that's untrue, but if the question is, does the teaching help my own game? I would say, no, not at all. Or maybe a minuscule level, because typically when I teach, I do a lot time to work on some tactics, and you know, I have to solve those tactics too. And so that might be the small, like 5 to 10% where, or maybe 15 if I'm being generous, that where it can help my game. But the issue is that, you know, thinking on the level that you need to think to be effective is just different at different levels. And so, yes. You know, I think I do, again, I go back to the word compartmentalize, because I do feel like that is what you have to do to be successful. And I even kind of think of it like someone that might be a personal trainer, right? Like they're forced to do that themselves. If there's, you know, some dude that's like, you know, working out on his own and so on, his session is way different than what he's going to work. In most cases, how he's going to work, you know, a student or a pupil, you know? So, and he has to separate those things to be effective. It's not like he's getting his work in when he's, you know, helping someone else. Yeah, that makes total sense. What about chess for fun? You know, serious players like yourself. I'm always curious. Do you still engage in any chess for fun? Like, do you go play blitz in the park? Do you like any chess variants? What do you do any chess for fun stuff? Obviously, apart from your stream. Very rarely, actually, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I think through the pandemic and even a bit now, I did play a little bit more blitz than usual. But I actually had a rule before when I was, globetrotting in 2019. I had a rule: no online chess, no blitz chess at all.
Interesting. Okay.
And I didn't touch any games online because the way I thought about it was, I thought about, especially given that I'm old in the chess world now. I'm 28, and that's old. So as far as the people you're competing with and so on, and so the way I thought about it was, I considered chess like boxing to the extent that every fight in boxing is one fight closer to your retirement. And so I thought that to me it was like no wasted energy. That was kind of one of the ways I thought about it. And so what was the point of putting all this energy into games that didn't matter when I had such a serious undertaking on my hands? When the pandemic happened, it was like, well, I'm not getting games in for a long time, and I like the game and I want to play. So it and then the streaming happened and that paradigm shifted. But I'm actually trying to get closer to the one that I had in 2019, just because I think I was most effective there. And because there is this addictive quality of basically binging games on the internet. And so, and then we get back into what, I mentioned earlier about having, a lot of play without the necessary balance of analysis and so on. And so, that's kind of where I landed where I'm landing with it. Although the legacy of 2020 and 2021 is that it's been hard to shed the online component completely because I was so engrossed in it for such a long period of time. Right. So that's that dynamic. And then as far as just the joy of the game, I still love chess. I mean, that's why I'm doing it. But it does, when something is more of a job or, it definitely is different. And, I mean, people say, oh, you love what you're doing, then you never have to work a day in your life. That's true. I don't feel like I'm working like a real job or anything like that. But at the same time, what you need to be, the way you play to be successful, or the way to be successful in chess, is not necessarily at the high level, is not necessarily mirrored with how you got into chess and why you fell in love with it.
That's true.
You most people fall in love with the game because of they enjoy playing and really the beauty and the aesthetic of it and so on. But if you're more results oriented, your decision making changes a little bit because you're performing gymnastics over whether to take risk or not, what moments to really go for it or not, and as a result, that is just the fact that you're even doing that calculus is just very different than how you were reading and reacting when you started, and so something has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you described it extremely well, right? Like performing gymnastics to determine the risk you may or may not want to take. I love that quote. That's such a clean way of putting it, and it really helps you almost visualize this new relationship that you have to have with the game when you're playing it at the serious level that you are currently.
Right. And I think, people, I've even thought myself, when I'm free, I'm going to play better. If I'm a Grandmaster, then I can do whatever I want, and so on.
You no longer have to worry about the goals and the
right.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that's true, actually. That you're more effective when you don't have that urgency. Like
the urgency, the pressure that it puts on you almost helps you perform better in some ways.
Right. Well, I heard Matthew Sadler talking about this, English Grandmaster, and he was saying that when he left to play and to work in IT, which is his profession today and has been for like 20 years. He was like, oh, well, now if I come back to chess now and then, I'm just going to be playing so well because it's not like I don't need the results the way I did when it was my profession. And it just wasn't the case. And so it'll be interesting to see like what Sadler was kind of referencing in a way too is like if Magnus actually Magnus Carlsen elects to not play in the next World Championship cycle, but still be involved in chess, as he says, may be a possibility if he can maintain the same effectiveness. Because when that drive is not there,
it's harder to perform.
Yeah.
I mean, how could it not be, right? If you don't have the drive and the desire.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, Kassa, this has been magnificent to talk to you and to hear your insights, and again to hear your very unique and fascinating, frankly, chess story. Would you have any words of wisdom or advice for people out there, maybe who want to get into streaming, or maybe even who just want to sort of follow the path that you've had of forging your own way and improving their game?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of things. I'll just say some of the things that come to my mind. Well, first of all, with respect to streaming and content creation and that type of thing, I really believe if you do anything consistently enough and then long enough, even if you're not really good at it, you're going to have people attracted to your content. It's just the way these things tend to work. If you're releasing stuff like every day for a year or 5 days a week for a year, you'll be surprised at how quickly you'll get traction. And I think most people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year but underestimate what they can do in 10. And so if you're consistent, you have that long view, you can be successful really in most things. I really believe that. As far as maybe, just if whether you're into chess or not and just improving and so on, it really is important to kind of lean into the journey and the process of it. As cliche as that it may sound, one of the things that was reinforced through the pandemic personally was basically the idea that nothing is guaranteed, but also that, things might not necessarily happen on your timeline, and you have to be comfortable with that. And so I think a lot of times, particularly with, our young people today, and we might say, "What are you saying? You're young. What are you saying?" But I think a lot of my generation, maybe younger generation, we don't finish things. We tend not to finish things. We tend to have, our first bout of adversity, and then we stop. And that's just kind of the vibe I get, is that people are kind of wanting to be seen more so than they want to be great. If you put in the work and, then you will ultimately be seen. But you have to kind of put in that work to kind of get that reward that I think people kind of tend to want on the front end. I would say though those are kind of the initial things that come to mind.
I think that's great advice. And in terms of your comment about age, it feels to me, and maybe you have the same experience, but every year that I go and play a tournament, it seems like the average age of my opponents is decreasing. Like they're just getting younger and younger.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think it really is particularly the case in the U.S. There are certain countries, the U.S. being one of them, where there's such an oversaturation of ambitious and talented youth, and so it does make you kind of, it can even make you question your where you are and why you are where you are. But I mean that's still that you're there. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Yes, you'll be fine. I've always wondered about the idea of hosting like adults only tournaments. I wonder if those would be popular, just have a 18 plus section or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone maybe a few years back, because what you do notice is that a lot of people that played chess, particularly up through the scholastic ranks, ultimately drop it, when they go to college or when they, start professional life and so on. And one of the things we landed on was that people tend to leave the game because the kind of the reasons they got into it go away. And so the relationships they formed aren't there anymore, or the social interaction, especially with computers, how the post-mortem is just really rare. Most people just go straight to their rooms and check the engine. And so I think having kind of grown folks and together.
Hey, there's the name, Grown Folks Open.
Yeah, like then you have this opportunity to get more than the game. You get those other elements that make us people. And it's part of the reason actually. I really enjoy coaching. I do enjoy coaching adults, probably because at the end of the day, I can be way more loose with my language.
Right.
They also have that life experience, and it's more of an exchange. So, so I think that's what we're all kind of looking for, whatever the domain is, So,
yeah, the human element.
Yeah.
Well, again, Kassa, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. This has been a real pleasure, and I look forward to watching some more chess radio.
Yeah. I've definitely been infrequent with it as my travels and so on has picked up. But I'll pop in now and then, and you just have to. I guess people tell me when you follow or subscribe, then a notification comes to your email, and then you gotta be quick with it. so
I like it. It's like the exclusive content. It's cool. Yeah. So if you want to do that, by the way, it's twitch.tv/Casablanca11. That's Casa with a K. We will also publish that link with the podcast when it goes live. So you can just click right on it. You can subscribe. You can follow Kassa. And anytime he does, in fact, fire up the chess radio, you'll be able to tune right in.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Pete. Man, you're making me wonder if I should do it today or something. But we'll see.
Hey, if you do, I'll catch you for sure.
All right.
Thank you again, Kassa.
All right. Have a good
struggle. You say best. That's hard to define.
Thank you for listening to the Chess Underground, a U.S. chess podcast. Please check out our entire suite of podcasts, which release every Tuesday, and include Ladies' Night with Jen Shahad, as well as Chess Life cover stories and One Move at a Time with Dan Lucas. U.S. Chess would like to thank Jason Andre at 7 Season Films Photography and Media for our podcast production and editing. If you are starting your own podcast, visit www.7seasonfilms.com for consulting, production, and editing. Until next time, signing off, Pete Karagianis.